The Force Awakens does something fundamentally that changes how we understand Star Wars. Or rather, it should fundamentally change how we understand the Star Wars series. Strangely, though, the filmmaker seems completely unaware of this in the rest of their cinematic universe. In fact, one of the major plot points in Episode 7 inadvertently sets up something of a Stormtrooper's paradox. To explain what I mean by that, I want to focus on a few scenes in particular. The first scene is near the very beginning of The Force Awakens, and it signals the first shift in the Star Wars mythos. First, we see a Stormtrooper bleeding, and for a franchise about an intergalactic war, very few or little blood is ever shown on screen. It's your boy Isaiah, and today I want to talk about the innate significant paradox that exists within the Star Wars Force Awakens movies, which is somewhat of a Stormtrooper paradox. If you're new to this channel, please like and subscribe. We're new here, so I want to keep this growing. And yeah, let's get back into the video. We see for the first time a Stormtrooper take off his helmet to reveal a very human face, or one that is clearly disturbed by the recent events that he's in. The removal of a mask to expose someone's true humanity is a recurring motif in the Star Wars series, and we've had hundreds, if not thousands, of Stormtroopers before, but we've never seen one with a face prior to F92187. Both of these scenes communicate that under the iconic armor, Stormtroopers are people with feelings and who feel pain both physically and emotionally. The result is that The Force Awakens does something no other movie in the long-running franchise has ever done before. It humanizes Stormtroopers. To understand why this is such a revelation and why it's so important and how it impacts the rest of the Star Wars mythology, we're going to need a quick history lesson in the Star Wars cinematic universe. Stormtroopers are the intergalactic military force of the Imperium, synonymous with space imperialism and oppression. They're said to be brutal, precise, and loyal soldiers to the Emperor who've undergone years of extensive military training. Despite their role as foot soldiers for Palpatine's intergalactic authoritarianism, Stormtroopers have become some of the most recognizable pop culture icons on Earth today. But, as we've all known by now, the Stormtroopers is a borrowed term from a special division in the German army of the World War I. These soldiers were known as Stormmen. They were aggressive, heavily armed assault troops organized into companies known as Stormtroopers, and they would later become a paramilitary unit in World War II under the Nazi SS army of one Adolf Hitler. In George Lucas's much maligned prequels, the predecessors to the Stormtroopers are introduced in the Republic's clone army. Clone soldiers who are made, ordered, and used as the Republic fighting machine, all sharing the same genes and the same face. They're totally obedient, taking orders without question. By the time the original trilogies roll around, clone soldiers have been phased out, and the ranks of the new Imperial Stormtroopers are completely made up of conscripts and volunteers. In The Force Awakens, we're told that many of them were kidnapped as children and brainwashed into loyal fighters, turning them essentially into child soldiers, which I think is especially noteworthy, considering the only Stormtrooper's face we've ever seen belongs to a young black man called Finn, aka Rey's butt boy. Every other Stormtrooper in The Force Awakens has no face, no name, no individualism. They're completely dehumanized across 8 feature films. They're portrayed as little more than disposable grunts. F92187, or Finn, as is eventually known in Episode 7, is the only exception. Finn is an Imperial defector who joins the Resistance with Rey. Yeah, he's funny, he's emotional, and brimming with personality in The Force Awakens. Not exactly what you expect from someone kidnapped and brainwashed by the Emperor from an early age. By setting that aside, Finn is the only Stormtrooper out of the possible millions that we've ever seen develop a consciousness. Are we to believe he's the only one with the ability to resist the First Order programming? Well, no. It's possible for other Stormtroopers to reject their conditioning. In fact, the First Order has a protocol for exactly this kind of non-compliance, as F9287 knows, and yet Finn rebels anyways. Finn's very existence stands in dogmatic contrast to the rest of the Stormtroopers in The Force Awakens, and I mean, on the other hand, we have a likable, humanized Stormtrooper who switches sides, and on the other hand, we have his fellow Stormtroopers who the Resistance kill without a second thought. This is what I feel the movie lacks and has a confused, dissident relationship with, and it's one of their major plot points. And this is why it feels like the movie doesn't really buy into its own story, because if Finn can remain very much human despite years of programming and conditioning, then that must mean the same can be true for all the other stormtroopers in The Force Awakens. But unfortunately, the writers responsible for this movie don't seem to be all interested in pursuing this. Any of the moral complex questions that arise from this fact, preferring instead to indulge in more action scenes built around blasting more mindless automatons. In fact, killing stormtroopers has become so mundane that's an in-universe joke, often played for laughs. Stormtroopers are framed as easy to kill, both figuratively and comically, and they're killed a lot. Over the runtime of The Force Awakens, and in total, we see 68 stormtroopers shot, stabbed, or vaporized by a Jedi. Those are just the ones that we see die on screen. Again, these are child soldiers kidnapped by the Emperor that we're talking about here, which is even more of a reason why the movie should at least acknowledge the underlying tragedy of their circumstance. But it never does. I mean, it's not easy to imagine a more emotionally complex plotline that a group of kidnapped children who are brainwashed by the Emperor and in their adulthood organize a resistance cell to subvert the First Order from the inside. But remember that F9287, aka Finn, Awaken, is triggered not by the death of some innocent citizen, but by the death of his friend and fellow stormtrooper. This is the event that quite literally leaves a mark on him, and yet the film quickly forgets this key transformative moment, because minutes later we see Finn laughing while blasting his former teammates. And now you may say that Finn and the rest of the resistance cells are acting in self-defense. Then you may be right. I mean, Star Wars is after all a story about resistance when faced with the oppressive police and military systems that sometimes violence is inherent necessary to achieving liberation. But having to hurt one group of people in order to help another is always going to be a tragic trade-off. If the movie's core message is that Finn's redemption story is the Force Awakening, something that the film really wants us to believe in, then we should have spent at least a little bit more time in the and a little bit more mental bandwidth to make sure that we believe that even F92187 Finn, the stormtrooper, can change to the light side of the Force. Then, if that's possible, then it's possible for all the other stormtroopers to change as well. To be honest, isn't that really the core message at the heart of the original Star Wars trilogy? That they can exist good even in someone as evil as Darth Vader? Because if that's the case, and I think it is, then that means that the fall of every stormtrooper represents the death of a possibility of another F92187's awakening. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.